Hey, thanks for checking out the Depleted Key podcast where we talk about all things World of Warcraft. Today is May 12th, 2021. I'm Tarithal, and joining me as always is Spoogy and special guest Spum.
What's up, man?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
So, as an introduction, Spum is one of our raid healers who actually joined our guild right before we started Mythic Council progression. How about you go ahead and tell us a little bit what you were doing before that, Spum?
Yeah, so I came into Shadowlands with a group of like really long-term friends, guys I've been playing with for the last like decade pretty much. And we had aspirations just with group size to just knock out Heroic as quick as we could. And we had a fairly quick AOTC. A couple people fell off early. I think we dropped from like a 23 man down to a 14 by the time we ended up getting AOTC, but we got it pretty quick and people kind of dropped off gradually after that to the point where we couldn't fill a 10 man with the same group and we didn't really want to pug. So I kind of resorted to doing keys to get, gear past the heroic raid stuff and got fairly geared off just keys. Like I think when I first joined you guys, if you were to inspect me, it's like almost no raid gear, like completely Mythic Plus stuff from the vault, more or less, like 226s from the vault. I got really lucky on that. And I think just based on like my eye level and my AOTC and maybe my IO score or something, I looked like a fairly juicy applicant. I tried to, I found you guys on the forum and hit you guys up and just was like, hey, never done, haven't done Mythic this tier at least, looking to come in and help you guys progress. And you said you'd give it a shot. Just it seemed like you were really needed a shaman. And
yeah, that was the thing. So the funny thing was we were looking for people with Mythic experience. At the time, we had actually a holy priest. That wasn't me. We had a holy priest healing in our raid group, and we're rolling into Council Prog, where if you know anything, for the listeners that don't know anything about Mythic Council, it's a lot of it is damage mitigation more than actual healing throughput. And so in my mind, I'm like, man, I want to have another shaman. So the next time we go through this, when we have our people jumping to clear their stacks, we have like this huge SLT basically for every single jump, we'll have that covered. And you just happen to apply, and honestly, you didn't really even have like the experience we were looking for, but we just like really wanted that shaman, right? And so we ended up giving you a shot, and you just like blew our meters open, right? You're just doing like way more healing than we expected for someone without.
It was funny too. I honestly was like really happy with, there were certain things I wasn't happy with. Like, I think I died on like Shriekwing, which is like the one fight that I had done. Okay. And like, or not even like, I hadn't even killed it. We did it really early on when we still had 20 people and we just like took a look at it and I knew the mechanics, but something happened. I died early on in that and was like, oh, here we go. Here's my trial, this Shriekwing death. But I ended up, honking or whatever and doing fine. And then I think the rest, because that first week that I did, we did really well. I think we got a Nerva down like in 2 attempts, which I think you guys had just killed her the previous week for the first time. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple fights I was switching elemental just because I think you guys were trialing multiple healers. But yeah, in terms of like parsing and like actual like meter numbers, I was happy with how it did.
Yeah, you're basically like my spirit brother because it was the same thing for me. All of my gear was Mythic Plus because I hadn't gotten anything out of the actual Mythic raid. We got AOTC and we never had enough for 20 people to do the raid. But we did try pugging and we got like 2 out of 10 done, but it was always so draining because, you get somebody leaves and you're back in looking for somebody else. And then, just the whole rotating door thing. And it really drained all of our raiders and our raid group kind of fell apart. And that's when Isaac was like, come over here. We need healers. Like, we don't have any healers.
Yeah.
And then the night of the raid, I show up and it's like, by the way, we have like 7 healers. So we're going to be rotating people in and out. You might be going boomkin some.
Yeah, I did consider that. I forgot you guys actually trialed the same week.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, I've known Spooky for literally over a decade at this point, probably close to 15 years, in fact. And so in my mind, he's never really like been a trial just because I've known him for so long. And like he's been playing, like we've been doing Mythic Plus together, and he's like doing Mythic Plus with people in the guild, right? So in my mind, like he wasn't like a real quote unquote trial, right?
Already part of the crew. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just his first official, showing.
But yeah, I forgot that first week. So we had kind of opened up, our trialing position to generically everyone in the guild. And for some unknown reason, we just had like a ton of interest that specific week from people that weren't currently raiding with us. And most of them were healers.
I think if I recall, it was because the other group had gotten AOTC like right around that time. And a lot of those people were like looking to transition into Mythic.
Sure.
Something of that sort.
Yeah, but that was just funny timing. And then the two of you come in and just absolutely are destroying it with healing. And, we were trialing people. So we're like, does anyone have, an off spec? We can let some of our other healers trial. And both of you kind of jumped into the off spec role and we're still killing it, right? And so naturally, you guys just, did really well and ended up in the main raiding crew. So, yeah.
It was interesting for me, too, because like that was literally like I had watched, I think the day, like earlier in the day before I did the raid, I just was like, all right, let me pull up YouTube. I've never seen these fights. I assume we're going to, push all the way up to council. And I just like really quickly, I watched them all at like 1.5 speed because I like had forgotten to. And then like 6:30 p.m. or 7 p.m. EST rolled around and raid was like an hour away. And I was like, oh man, I got to comb through these videos. I'm going to suck. And I like watched them all wicked fast and was like, all right, cool. And then we went in and it went well. Like I remember the whole time I was like, the highlight of my night, I was like, is going to be healing Sun King. I was like, I'm going to pop off. Like I had the build I set aside. I was like Ascendance, like I was ready to go. And then I think Thick was like,
yeah, we had your DPS.
Asked me to go Elemental. And I was like, oh man, like, this was the one. This is what I wanted. But I think I topped as Elemental just because you can cleave off all those imps in the second phase there. Yeah. I had the Earthquake Legendary on too, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my intro with you guys, and then it just seemed like it clicked. I know you pulled me in for a few keys. I had expressed interest in doing some higher keys when I'm available to. That's my issue with this whole expansion has been like I've been playing as efficiently as I possibly can because I don't have a lot of time to play. So it's like when I have time to get on, like I have to. It's like okay, got to put something in the vault. Okay, got to like do all the chores that are like necessary to player power, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like I'm at the point where like I'm logging in for raid and like I'm using my like follower table to farm like food and gold and augment runes and stuff, and like I'm barely even doing anything outside of raid and like a couple keys a week. But I'd love to. It's not that a lack of interest. It's just I'm busy.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
that's where I'm at myself. But it's gotten hard too with the length of the expansion as well. Well, not the expansion, the tier. Some of those chores I felt more like chores than actual, content to me a little bit too.
Yeah, it's like, I know like with Torghast and stuff, like it's hard to want to go in there when you have like your best legendary for like all your specs. That's what I did. I was like, gonna get my enhanced Lego, my resto Lego. I'm gonna get 2 resto Legos because that's my main spec, and then like the like a single target and a cleave elemental legendary. Like once you have those all 235, like I swear I haven't been in Torghast in like a couple months. Like, and I don't hate the concept of it. Like I actually kind of find it fun, but it's like I just don't need to do it. I feel like I don't need to do it. Maybe I'm just neglecting the soul ash I should be getting, but I don't know. I just
the thing about Torghast to me is they should make it broken, in my opinion. Just let crazy stuff happen, let stupid builds go, and just have like this one little place, this one little sandbox where you go in and just have fun with it,
Yeah.
Sure.
There's going into 9.1, they're essentially going to make us go back in there again. And it's actually something that's kind of frustrating me. So currently I don't have a lot of motivation to go and farm all the Stygia for sockets and, trying to RNG my conduits, especially if you play a character like a druid where, all of your conduits are at 200 or 213. And you have to farm up all of the Stygia and then RNG and hope you get the right conduit upgrade. Like, that just feels bad. And I was actually thinking about it today. I don't know if either of you have played the game Summoner's War.
Yeah.
I have not.
Well, they have a system in that game where there's like these elemental dungeons, right? And when you go in the elemental dungeon and you kill the final boss, it drops like this elemental shard. And then you essentially have to go through all the different dungeons and like collect a certain combination of shards, and from those combinations you can build gear. And I thought it would be a cool idea if they opened up literally all, 6 or 8 wings of Torghast, and each end boss in Torghast would drop like some sort of, shard of Cold Heart, right? And so you get 10 shards of Cold Heart, and then you get 10 shards of one of the other wings, right? And if you get a certain combination of these elements, you could like actually target like a random potency conduit, instead of just like having all of the conduits be random. I thought it'd be cool if maybe they did it that way, right? And make it more fun, like you're talking about. Just let it be super repeatable, super quick. They'll let you just go in there and farm, the end bosses and get these elements that you need, so you can start targeting like specific types of conduits. That would be a better system than just the endless, dailies in the maw, and try to upgrade your gear based off of that, because that's just mindless and no one likes doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was hoping in the initial like creation of the concept, and like I must have been confused, but I had this idea in my head in the early stages of them announcing Torghast that it was going to be like almost this like more in depth version of what like the Mage Tower was, where it was like this personal, like you could go in as like a personal, challenge, and it would just ramp up like infinitely, and but you would also ramp up at the same time, and you'd get like a score at the end of it, or like some specific reward that's like whether it be cosmetic or something. But I thought it was going to have some like skill ceiling where like you could prove or like push the limits of like how far you can make it. And like I know that wouldn't be necessarily like balanced from class to class, and like you'd kind of just have your like tier lists of who can go to X point on average or whatever. But I don't know. I missed that. That's one thing I missed from Legion that I feel like BFA didn't have either. Is like I loved the Mage Tower with like I got every class I played at the time. I think I had like 4 alts, and I got the appearance on every single spec that I played, just because I was like cool. It was cool, and I was like proud to do it.
Well, what you're imagining was actually like the early version of Torghast that they were building and kind of promising us. Where it's going to be more like that endless roguelike, like you don't know what's going to happen, like what's going to load in on the next floor. Like it was supposed to be like randomized and everything. The only thing you were supposed to know is that, the skill was going to, they were going to get a little bit tougher, you get a little bit more powerful, that kind of thing. And it was, Isaac, like less than a month from launch, they kind of scrapped Torghast and watered it down to this version that we have now. Which to me was really disappointing, because that was one of the features, like you said, I was looking forward to. Maybe something even kind of like the Proving Grounds in Mist of Pandaria, where you can go in and you got the bronze, silver, and gold, and, you get the gold and you get the title like, oh, I'm a good tank, or I'm a good healer, the proven tank.
That'd be sweet. Like even if it was like what it is now, but it was like timed, and you got like, you could get gold if you did it faster or something, and you could get like gold in all the wings. Like just put something like that in, it's like, it seems so simple, and like just reward people for their personal performance, or their small group performance or something. It's hard to incentivize it with the current system.
I was watching Growl stream earlier this week, and he made like a really good point about where the WoW developers missed their mark. Like the rewards for endgame content need to be flashy, right? Like the reason you play the game and the reason that you do content and what makes content fun is so that you could acquire something that someone else doesn't have, and then you could show that off to the people that don't have it, right? And so, I mean, that's really true, though, right? I mean,
that is WoW. You used to go to the main city back in like vanilla, and you show off your armor set or your mount or something,
Right. And I mean, even if Torghast gave you like a really cool druid form or something, right? Even like a Night Fae, form, something that's like really cool and somewhat exclusive, right? I mean, that incentivizes you to go in there. And right now, you get the maw mount, and it's like, who cares? I don't know. Yeah. It's not that flashy, right? Like
yeah, you gotta give us the flex. We just want to flex. We just want to stand in Ouroboros and slash flex and have people look at us. It's like the old back in like Wrath. Like all I ever did was pop those oils that froze you in place. I'd do that on like my proto Drake in front of the bank in my like sick gear. Just be like, I'm here. Take a look. People would walk up, and like you just knew. I was also in like high school at the time.
Yeah. It was a good time back then. I remember you killed was it not Malagos? The astral boss in Ulduar. It's kind of like a secret boss. Remember that?
Oh, Algalon?
Agalon.
Algalon, yeah. Remember when you killed that and the whole town, like the big speech happened, the beam went into the sky, and you're like, yeah, that was us. We did that.
Yeah, all those city interactions. Cool. Onyxia back in the day, the head and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, they definitely need to add something a little bit better. Like I'm optimistic with like the new M Plus system. That there'll be some better rewards. They did put in one of their interviews they did recently. They're like, well, we don't really have any super end game systems set up for people that are pushing like 25 keys or whatever, right? But they're like, now we can at least track who the top people are. Internally we can do that. So, maybe they could build something off of that. But
definitely appreciate stuff like that getting implemented.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it definitely adds to the competitiveness of the game too, which I know players like us enjoy.
I'll tell you right now, the current reward for what is it, all 20s? And you get to teleport back to the entrance of the dungeon. Is that what it is? Or
yeah, it's essentially like if you watch the TR, like the tournament realm vendor, there's a vendor that you click on and you can teleport to any of the dungeons. And I'm pretty sure they're just putting that into live.
Yeah, to me that's okay. That's cool, but it's not the flex that I want.
Quality of life isn't the same as like player to player flex. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
It's special. It's hard to quantify,
you can't really show off your portal to Plaguefall. But if they gave you like a plague worm to wrap around your neck, you'd wear it proud, loud and proud.
I think if it was like a portal that somehow like opened up a black hole that you or like a wormhole that you walk through to like teleport to the dungeon, but like everyone around you like died instantly or something, and everyone else is like, "Oh shit, that guy's crazy."
Or they have to like slash Neil or something,
It gave everyone in 100 yards a debuff that said like in the presence of greatness.
Yeah, like the camera would start shaking or something as this person just like warped into the dungeon. Yeah,
that'd be worth it for all 20s for me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd be grinding that like early.
A good example is that KSM mount.
Yeah,
a couple months ago, getting that felt really good because not everybody had it at the time, and
you hated
popping that out.
Yeah, before you had it, you hated everyone that had it, and now it's like whatever because everyone has it. But before then, you saw a guy riding it around, you're like, I hate that guy.
You hate that guy, but then when you get it, you look down on the plebes, that don't have it.
Yeah.
You get into a pug key, you have to pop it out just to let them know, like, hey, I'm serious business, guys. Like
that's
kind of a big deal here.
Yeah, that's one thing about this current tier. Like I know. People have their gripes with like the length of it. And like, I'm having fun. I'm having fun with the keys. I'm having fun with the raid. I also, I don't play as much as a lot of other people, but I'm still doing the content. But that's one thing that like those rewards, like you just said, it felt you were mad at people when you didn't have it and they did. And then when you get it, you're stoked for like a couple weeks. But like when you got it like 3 months ago or whatever, and now, by the point that the next patch rolls in, like everyone's gonna have it because 15s, are that much easier to do.
Right.
So it's like you almost wish that the cutoff was sooner for things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
But here we are trying to push cutting edge, and it's like, no, don't cut it off. We're almost there. It's like.
Speaking of cutting edge, and I guess I'll move into our next topic. So, we didn't actually do a podcast last week. We got pretty caught up with real life stuff, and we missed a week, but we did raid last week, and we probably had, I don't know, 5 or 6 sub 10% wipes on Sludge Fist on Mythic. And we finally knocked them out yesterday, which feels pretty good. And the 3 of us are raid healers, which is also fun because we ended up 4 healing the fight. And so 3 out of the 4 healers are actually represented here. And so what do you guys think of it?
Man, like I thought we were doing, I think it was and having it be the last night that we get the kill, it feels right this way, but it was consistently pull to pull. I think the best night that we had. I think there were a few hiccups like right before the break and maybe like not right after the break, but maybe like half an hour after the break. There was like a couple lulls where there were like a batch of 3 or 4 pulls that were a little rough, but the majority, like 75% to 80% of the pulls were like really, really good with minor, just hectic errors. And it felt like I would have been really surprised had we not got it. I know it was very, very close, when we finally got it. Like we barely squeaked it out at the end, but that's kind of how that fight's supposed to feel. But I think it went well. We started off 5 healing, and then just to give us that little push at the end there, we switched it to 4. And I know we had talked about it in the middle of the raid, like it felt fine on us. Like my mana was getting used a little bit quicker, but I still was able to manage it. The throughput from everyone across the board went up, because there's more to heal, and it took away, and this was one thing you pointed out, Tarithal, in the raid, it took away a lot of the like sniping for throughput, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it didn't feel like you had to snipe. It was like, oh, people actually need this healing, you know what I mean? Like, I don't just have to like blanket with Riptides. I can actually like meaningfully cast all these spells and have it be relevant. So it felt really good. Like, that's one of the, not that prog like bums me out when you don't get a kill, because that's all progression towards getting the kill eventually. But the night you get the kill is sick, and I think it went really well.
I always I know it sounds kind of weird, but I always enjoy those nights where we just put in a lot of elbow grease. Like we were on council for quite a while and sludge for a little bit, and I never really minded it that much. I think I liked council better as far as like wiping, just because there was so much RNG that could happen with too much DPS or too little DPS, and it changes the order the spells are coming out at you. But I don't know, I always like to get in there and just doing the whole problem solving part of it. And sludge was very straightforward. Every minute we're hitting something, and these spells are going to come out in this order. And so for sludge, to me, it was more like just fine tuning exactly when to press those buttons. And I really like healing with the Resto Shaman, and when you went to Holy. Because like my role was more like, keep the hots rolling, keep everybody, from dropping dead, and let you guys do the, to pick them up, fill up those bars with, with the bigger heals, while I try to keep everybody from dropping dead. So what it kind of felt like to me.
That was actually the reason I went Holy, just because I don't know. Disc is great for that fight because it's reliably, you can do it exactly at the same time. I was doing it on the roars before each pillar. But even then, I kept seeing people hovering, around like 10% or so. And it was like, man, I just really want to have that instant heal, to save that person before the pillar slam. And Disc didn't really have that. And Holy just right now just feels so good. And I was actually texting Spooge about this before the podcast, but we were talking about the healing comp, and like, it was crazy how all of us kind of like just kept flipping around on the meter, like who was doing the most output at any given time. And really it came down to whoever, whichever spread, like the pre-spread, whichever one of those got screwed up the most before our major cooldown, like that essentially was on whoever, whichever healer was on top of the meter.
Sure.
And
if they really messed it up right before a Tranquility. I would shoot up, and if they did it, right before Spum did it, he would shoot up. But the final meter, I ended up being third place on the kill, and I was like, damn it. But then I was looking at it, and I'm like, oh, we're all very close. And healing is not like DPS, it's a zero-sum game. Everybody was alive that needed to be at the kill, so it worked out. I was still, pissed off that I was third, but
at least it's the three of us, and we're here being amicable and chatting about our competition. That fight. I messaged you, Tarithal, over a couple progression nights, and I was like, this is maddening at times, because first, like on paper and when you're playing it out and things are going smooth, it's so easy. That fight is so easy. Like Council felt, and it could have just be because it was long and dragged on, but there was more random. There were more variables. There was a lot more like the pull was different. This fight is like, I was like I wish there was a way to. There probably is in meter in parses and things that I just haven't combed through, but like I'd be willing to wager that like all my spell casts from pull to pull are almost exactly the same at the exact same time every pull. Like within 3 or 4 seconds of each other. Like it's so mechanical and like choreographed, and basically like the first 60 pulls or so were me just being like, okay, I did better this pull because I cast Cloudburst here instead of Wellspring or something like that. And it's like, and then just picking and like, okay, this is more throughput here, this is more throughput here, and like it never changes, except for if anyone makes like a mistake, or like if we didn't catch a boulder and there was like a huge burst of damage that was irregular or something. But I mean, it got very like choreographed until like the very, very end is like really hectic and more variables in that section. But
for me, it felt like my natural progression, because obviously I started as disc, and then I thought, yeah, I'm gonna try holy on this and just see if we can out throughput it, right? And then we dropped down from 5 to 4 healers, and then within 5 pulls, I think we were all pretty set on what we were doing. But after that, I was essentially just trying to figure out how can I squeeze the most amount of damage in, while keeping the healing going. And so I was like trying to change my key bindings on my holy set, because it's super awkward to fit damaging spells onto your holy bars. And so I was like trying to weave those in every time. Like I was moving towards the pillar, I was trying to cast my dots, just to get like a little bit more out of it. So yeah, that was basically like my progression throughout the fight. Is like I kind of want to hit like 1k DPS. A couple times got close. I think you actually were a little bit over 1k on the kill. I think I was around like 700 or so. But
yeah, I try my damnedest every pull on every fight to do as much damage as I can, because it's not like it doesn't really, like, I guess, it means something on fights like that where you actually need all the damage you can get. But like, I try to have, high purple or orange damage parses as a healer as often as I possibly can. And I said it, last night, but I use, what are they called? Help harm macros, where you bind a heal and a damage spell to the same key. And depending on what you're targeting, it changes. So like, my 1 through 5 key is, like healing wave, healing surge, chain heal, riptide, healing rain. But it's if I'm targeting an enemy, it's lightning bolt, lava burst, chain lightning, flame shock, earthquake, or whatever. Not, if I'm elemental, it is. But
that's a good idea.
Yeah, actually. And it's like it saves your bars. It's less confusing, and you just have to if you're healing someone, you can just tab target, or you can make it all mouse over too. So it's like, you can make it really smart and easy, and it allows for you to do a good amount of damage.
That's pretty smart, actually. I'll probably actually set that up right after the podcast, because that makes sense.
Yeah, I do that for every healer I play. Like, even my disc, I've got like Smite and Shadow Mend, I believe, are the same key. Same with my Bubble and Shadow Word Pain or Purge the Wicked or whatever are the same key. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I do that with like a shift modifier instead of what I'm targeting. But that fight in particular was kind of hard for me because I went the Guardian affix to take less damage myself.
Yeah.
And so I lost the Boomkin form. And, I got in there, and like one of the early pulls, I popped Heart of the Wild and Convoke, and I looked down and I'm a freaking bear. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, oh yeah, my bad. And so, we didn't get anything out of that. There was like no healing, and I was a bear, so there was like no damage, minus like a Moonfire. But yeah, so I lost a lot of damage on that fight. I was only able to keep up dots.
Yeah, it's hard for a boom or for a druid in general, I would think. Yeah, maybe a couple dots, but yeah, unless you don't convoke, offensively, then you're probably not going to do much damage.
No, and if you're not convoking, you also you pretty much have to go kind of all in for a couple seconds on DPS to change forms. That's a global, and then start casting, one way or the other, the moon or the sun side, and get a proc, and then you can actually do a little bit of damage. Meanwhile, you're not doing any healing, and it's some fights you can definitely have those windows, but that fight was, especially when we went to 4 healing, it was more keeping those hots rolling and making sure everybody was healthy. And I always felt like the melee were needing way more attention than the range. So like I was putting my efflorescence on the melee and trying to maximize that and keep my mastery going on them with hots. So
yeah, you get more targets per like AoE. I know, like with your efflorescence and my healing rain, I dump a lot of healing rains onto melee and that, because you can include the tanks who are taking the most damage throughout the fight, and you get the whole melee group. The only issue with that is, and it's part of the choreographing of the fight, is what is that, the effect where it pulses out the ring and melee has to run away. You lose if you drop your thing at the wrong time, you lose the healing to them moving out. But if you time it right, it's definitely good to throw that shit into
definitely something I struggle with. But you start getting in there and you're seeing the same, like you're saying, it's just like those small little tweaks here and there. It almost felt like you said, just pressing the same exact buttons. Like I was always having to swift mend the same exact person at the very start of the raid. For some reason, I was always hitting the cat first.
Oh, North.
Yeah, the Trinidaddy. I was hitting him first because I don't know why he always took the biggest damage from the roar, and so I would do that little autocast swift mend, not swift mend, regrowth.
Yeah.
And hit him with that off the bat, and then just start rolling with my hots from there. But it was like on pull every time, wild growth, regrowth him, and then start going. And it's just like every single pull the same.
Yeah, I was actually looking at the logs after the raid, and I was looking at the damage taken, and it's actually really interesting. You can look at the damage taken, and it's almost sorted by class. Like it's Clothies are at the very top. They took the most damage, but it's literally lined up by class, right? It's like the 2 priests, the mage, the warlock, and then you go down. It's all the leather wearers, right? So you just have like a wall of boomkins and druids, and then it's literally sorted by class. And I thought that was really interesting. So it wasn't like anyone was taking really more damage than anyone else. Just it's the natural damage take an increase based off of your class proficiency or whatever.
Well, I think the melee. I felt like I don't have any data, but it always felt like they were taking more damage, and he should theoretically be the squishiest of the melee because most of them are plate, right? So
yeah, sure.
But yeah, so I was always trying to focus him at the start, get my hots rolling out, and then it was just literally cooldown timing. As soon as that first roar came out, convoke, flourish, get to the pillar, and the only real variable that you had to deal with that fight was getting chained to somebody. And I could tell you, I definitely would relax a lot more when I had Spum because we would always start way on the side.
We would message each other about that. It's just like, man, when we get chained, it's just like, it's so uplifting. It just feels right,
I definitely screwed you one time. I mean, we're deep into a night and it's late and we're billion pulls in, and I was like, oh, I got Spum as my partner. And it may be last night or the end of last week, but I didn't even look for you. Like it didn't even register in my brain that I need to come to him and group up. I'm like, oh, it's Spum. I'm okay. I completely forgot about the mechanic. And luckily you were on the ball and you came to me. But it was not intentional, and I was not trying to be, an a-hole about it. It's just that my brain was like, oh, it's Spum. I'm okay. I'm not gonna die. And we didn't die to chains, but
I definitely gripped a couple people during the night, like they were on the other side of the room. And I'm sure I screwed up a couple of people's cooldowns, right? I probably gripped them right in the middle of something and canceled something, but it's
I definitely saw you the wings pop out of your back and someone just zip through the air. I'm like, oh hell yeah.
I think I did it to Hip once, and I actually heard him snicker in Discord because I think for him it was probably fine, right? And he just wasn't expecting that to be so smooth, right? Because we were not even close to each other, but we spread out so we didn't clip people. Then you get that extra 2 seconds or whatever before the chain actually attaches you to your partner. It's in between those two timings, I gripped him over to me, and it worked out perfectly. And I heard him kind of snicker in Discord, and it felt good.
I think we all kind of have our spots that we like to go to in general. When we they say spread out.
Definitely.
And mine was always the opposite of where Tarithal was. Right on the very first part, you and I, Spum, to start on the right. He would be over there by thick, and the second pillar, he would kind of stay by the pillar, and I would spread all the way to the right, trying to make room. And he definitely gripped me twice. Not the same night, but over the progression, he definitely gripped me back over there to him.
It's not really me trying to be a dick or trying to be lazy.
No, it was good. It was good.
It's literally I'm the slowest class in the game, right? I'm a priest, and so it's what can I do other than my goblin jump? That's the only way I can get to you without clipping everyone in the raid.
That stuff is so risky.
Yeah.
I got paired with our only mage, right? We only have one mage.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple times we'd be running at each other and they'd change would spawn and he'd blink right to me, but there was the second where I saw him blink, I was like, oh no. Here we go. And then every time it was fine. I don't think the blink screwed me over once, but it always freaked me.
I had a funny moment last night where I had 2 swirls falling over my head after the third pillar right before the fourth. And I was linked to one of the boomkins, and I don't know why my brain thought this, but I'm like, oh no, I took too long. I can't walk this out. And I blinked out with Soul Shape and somehow didn't kill him. And then like I'm sitting there like after that healing, and I'm like, why did I do that? Like, why did my brain go there? But I almost killed 4 shift last night. And then I messaged him to pull after, and I'm like, did you see that? He's like, no. I'm like, good.
Yeah, I died once attached to him, and he definitely called me out on it. So
yeah, that was last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was last night.
Yeah, I definitely had moments. I'd say the majority of my mistakes on the prog pulls were like, for some reason, I was so slow to react to getting paired with a hunter. Like, we'd get paired with a hunter, and my brain would go like, I'm paired to a hunter. When we go to the pillar, go to the hunter group.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, that 30 or 45-second window goes by, and you start moving, and it's like 90% of the time I'm going to one stack. But then every so often I have to go to this hunter stack, and like, there's like that moment where I stop moving in the range stack, hunter keeps moving, and I'm like, oh, my chain's going to break. And then I move to him, and I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. It's like this. I had a wicked hard time adjusting to that. But
I was definitely guilty of that too. And last night I got paired up with Hip. Like, it felt like almost every pull. And luckily, I mean, by then we got like, how many pulls did we get? Was it 100 yet?
I think we were above 100 overall, but last night I think we did 30.
I don't think so. I think we killed it on our 19th or 20th poll. Actually,
okay,
yeah.
But
it goes so quickly though. Like
I know,
the pulls in there go so quickly. It's insane.
Much better than council in that regard.
Oh yeah.
You can tell within 3 minutes or 4 minutes that, hey, we just need to wipe it and start over versus 9 minutes.
9 minutes into the fight, you screw something up, and then you don't really learn anything for another 9 minutes. Yeah.
It might sound crazy to you guys, and you might not have the same sentiment, and it might just be because it's the most recent fight we did. But I feel like I feel like I was on sludge progression longer than council progression. Probably isn't accurate. I don't know, like the time, like the weeks that we were involved in either fight. Maybe it's because we missed a night of sludge progression and it like added another night of raiding, but like. I don't know. The sludge, I feel like we had more attempts on council and they're twice as long. But for some reason in my head, and it could just be the repetition of it all, but I felt like sludge took longer to me. They probably were like equal or close to it.
Yeah, I think they were probably, I don't know, I think it took us 3 weeks for council, maybe 4 weeks. I think it took us 3 weeks. And I think sludge took us 3 weeks roughly. So yeah, about the same. About the same.
I think we killed a council on a Tuesday, didn't we?
We did. Yeah, we did.
So it'd be like 3.5.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
And then that night we had for sludge, I don't think we kind of went in there for the lulls that first night.
Mm-hmm.
So it really doesn't count.
But overall, yeah, it was a fun week. Definitely enjoyed playing it with you guys. It's fun having a group of good healers, right? And I haven't really had like a good healing experience in raid for probably about a decade where we had like a really solid healing group, but it's definitely a pleasure, healing with you guys. And so
it definitely feels good right now. Yeah. I like chatting with you guys in raid, and like from pull to pull, it's always everyone's doing really well. And I feel like we all do our part healing wise and mechanically. It feels like we're a reliable, support unit.
Right. For sure.
And that's always good to have.
Healers are special because we know everybody's dirty secret, We're like, we know you messed up that mechanic,
Yeah, right.
Because we're watching.
Yeah, people have been asking me, specifically like Iron. He and I have been talking, about what we're going to do next tier, and I think he's kind of wanted to step back from the tanking role, and obviously I do most of my Mythic Plus stuff as the tank, and so naturally, it's something I could do, and he's been talking about maybe going Priest, and maybe I'll swap into like a Guardian Druid or something like that.
Thunderballs.
Yeah, I really want to, but at the same time, for the reason you just mentioned, it's almost good to be raid leading from a healing perspective, because you're right, you do see everything, right? And so you kind of know the following week or the following raid, right? What you kind of need to work on, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
you see everything.
So it's hard for me to kind of justify that, right? Especially since there's not really anything going wrong right now, per se. And so we'll have to see how that works.
Don't break up the homies.
Yeah, Holy Priest is. I'm really on to Holy Priest right now. I think it's super fun, and I think it's even going to get better. So, yeah, we'll see about that. But moving on to the next topic. So, this isn't really new right now. We did miss a week of the podcast, but I don't think we've actually talked about it yet. They did announce the new seasonal effects. At least it's been data mined. Generically. So what it's going to be is there's going to be anima powers that you're able to collect throughout the dungeon. And Wildhead did kind of a clickbait article on it in the sense that they essentially took all the raid anima powers that are going to be able to be used on the Terragru encounter, and they listed those all under the article about the dungeon. And people just kind of assumed like, oh, these are all the anima powers for the dungeon, when in fact we have no clue what anima powers they're actually going to be throughout the dungeons. We don't know if it's going to be random. We don't know, if they're going to be at fixed places. We don't know any of that stuff yet, but I thought we'd just kind of get some general thoughts about that. Spooge, if you want to start off.
I hope that they have class specific like Torghast does. Like Torghast has both. They have the class and spec specific, and then they have the more generic ones that anybody can get. And I do hope they have more of that spec and class specific ones, because it really, really makes Torghast a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, like it's crazy because you can go in as a bear and literally do more damage as a boomkin in Torghast with the full moons that'll just drop like crazy, like machine guns.
Yeah, I can't see them making it that OP though. People will be doing 50 keys if the powers are that strong.
Not that crazy, but I would like something specific, so that when you're building your comp, you think about that. You think about the variables that could be there.
Yeah, in my mind, so I actually did the raid testing on the Terragru fight, and there's a couple of effects in there that are kind of interesting. Like, for example, there's actually so the fight itself is 2 phases, and you're just essentially bouncing in between the 2 phases over and over and over. But the in-between phase, it's kind of like the ground is completely covered in like this black, dangerous area, but there's like one area that's clear. And if you don't make it to the safe area within like 5 or 10 seconds, everything that's not in the safe area explodes, right, and does a ton of damage, and you're essentially going to die. But there's an anima power that you can pick up before you start the encounter that makes it so you take 90% reduced damage from AoE effects. And so if you pick up that power, essentially you can just ignore that mechanic completely. You can stand wherever you want during that phase, and it won't kill you at all. And I was thinking about it. So if you take that anima power and you put it in a fixed location in a dungeon, say like the other side, right? And it's like an explosive week, right? For example, but if that power itself is located like in the Ardenweald wing, somewhere in the corner, and you can reliably know, okay, that anima power is located in the Ardenweald wing, that kind of changes your route on certain weeks, right? Because it kind of nullifies some of the passive dungeon affixes that you have to deal with, right? So if it's like an explosive week, right, and you guys go to the Ardenweald wing first, and you pick up that anima power, you probably just get to ignore explosive orbs, right? And then on top of that, you go to the dealer boss, and you basically get to ignore all the bombs as well, right? So if they do something like that, that could be kind of interesting, as long as it's not RNG. And so you can kind of counteract on a week by week basis some of the effects that are normally, kind of nasty and hard to deal with. So that would be kind of an interesting concept if it was practical, and that could actually change your routing from week to week.
Which is what I want. I want them to put something in that causes us to game plan a little more. That's what I liked so much about BFA, was that just the variability.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the same exact thing, same exact route every time.
Yeah. I think my favorite seasonal, and I think it's pretty communal, is the Awakening at the very end of BFA. Was like so good, in the sense that like you could avoid them to make the last boss harder to save time, which was cool for the groups that could manage, or you get all the skips from portal to portal. The way you deal with the bosses inside were cool. Like all the strats, like I remember so many weird portal strats in the Motherlode. Like would clear up to the first one, skip all the way to the boss, then backtrack to get all your trash, then do the boss, and then go to the next one, and like skip to like the end, right? And then you just do the last boss with one, and you could 3 chest the Motherlode with like these weird, crazy, high skill skips and stuff. And it's like that and I saw something early on saying there was like speculation that this was like some combination between that idea of awakening and like a Torghast anima type thing. And I don't necessarily know how that idea like meshes. Like it sounds too complex to combine those two things. Like I guess you could take aspects from one and the other, but like maybe it's like a mini boss placed in an area that drops the anima power and you can do it or not type thing. Like almost like how Pride works now or how the awakening bosses worked back then. I don't know.
Yeah, so for the raid, before you actually go in and fight the Terrigree, which is the first boss of the new raid, there's like this circle platform, and there's 4 of these. I think they're called Guardians or Goliaths or something like that. And they're actually the ones that drop the anima powers. I would be surprised if they're just kind of layered throughout the dungeons. Like, I think that makes sense.
Sure, just propped up in like a corner, the same way that the pillars were in Awakened or whatever.
Yeah, they essentially look like a suit of armor, right? That you, if you're walking through like a castle or something, right? You see like the suit of armor. It's essentially, it looks like that, and it like comes to life, right? And you fight it, and when you kill it, it drops like this shiny white orb that when you click on it, that opens up like the anima power menu for you. And so it looks like that makes sense that they would just kind of layer that throughout the dungeon. And I could see that. Yeah, I could see that if you just skip it, and you go and fight the boss, maybe all those suits of armor, come to life and fight you on the last boss. I totally could see that.
Yeah, and they might have like, a one with like a green hue to it for like a healing buff, or like one with a red hue for like a DPS buff or something, and you can see like, okay, that's the one that gives you this buff. Do we want that for this portion? Like skip it or not type thing.
Yeah, or maybe like the boss will get anima powers if you don't kill the Goliath or something.
Ooh.
You get to like the last boss, and it would actually like get an anima power for each one that you skip or something. That'd be interesting.
Wild.
Yeah, that would be really wild. But I don't know how you would do
tyrannical final boss with all the
corrosive dosage.
Oof,
healing itself and killing you for the damage that it's healing. Yeah, that'd be wild. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's too early to tell, and I think Blizzard immediately heard from the feedback from the public saying, yeah, RNG is bad, and hopefully they took that to heart. So for me personally, as long as it's not RNG and it's like, fixed, so you can make decisions, but it's like at fixed locations, I'm totally cool with that. And I think that makes it interesting.
I think, and like I said, Awakening or Awakened, I can't recall if it's one variation of that, but that was my favorite. Honestly, Prideful, I feel like has been like not like incredibly like in depth, but like still cool. Like it's nice to get the damage buff. The actual encounters with the manifestations were like, reasonably, they were mildly complex and dealt damage, and like they, had what they were, but the skip mechanic was there. But the one thing, the biggest issue that I think a lot of people have is, gosh, what am I? Sorry, I lost my thought there.
I think the biggest issue a lot of people have is just you have to be very precise when you spawn it, right? You can't be mid pull essentially, or less frequently can you actually pull that off. You can't spawn it one ad into like a 5 or 6 ad pull, right? Because that typically results in death.
That, and I remember what I was thinking. It's like face pulling is almost like you could kill a key pulling one extra mob because it just throws off the whole flow. Like you're timing all the percentages to get it when you want it. You pull something extra, and it's like, oh well, the math doesn't work out. I guess it's just scuffed the rest of the run.
Think about
that
Prideful.
Feels weird.
Prideful felt it's. I think it's going to go down the books as not the best, not the worst. Like it was an okay affix, but it almost felt like an okay first tier of the expansion affix. It was nothing real too complicated about it.
Yeah,
and it'd be kind of cool if they kind of gradually kind of stepped up the maybe the difficulty of the affix as it goes. Maybe.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that. I think had this seasonal affix come out next season, it would have been written off as like a really bad seasonal fix, but since it was actually placed at the beginning of an expansion, right, and it kind of made up for the gear that we were missing, right, and so it helps the healers out, it helps the DPS out. Yeah, I think it was perfect, like for where they placed it within the M+ season and like the expansion cycle. I think it was perfect. It's not super exciting. It's kind of fun. It's not bad at all. It's enjoyable. To familiarize with yourself with the dungeons, right? Kind of give you some introductory routes, and I think it served its purpose well.
And kamikaze your friends with the little
burst. Yeah, American Sniper.
Yeah.
But looking forward into next season. So I actually have tournament realm access for the Great Push. And going on there, it's nothing but Guardian Druids, which is super interesting. And Elemental Shamans, actually. And if you watch any of the top groups right now that have been streaming like the 27, 28 keys, that's all they're playing. They're playing Guardian Druids, Elemental Shamans, Shadow Priests are still making an appearance. And then, of course, you got your Boomkin and your Mage. But you guys have any thoughts on maybe how that'll impact the meta?
Yeah, I mean, I was happy to see when Elemental got the initial bump, because they started off a little lackluster, and it's something I've been playing. I've been playing Shaman for a really long time, and I've seen the ebbs and flows, and it feels cool to when they're in the meta. But yeah, I'm not super versed on the tank meta. I see what I see, and I see what comes and goes, and like I felt like it started off in the Vengeance kind of like Brewmaster like realm in terms of the comp, and then Bears kind of just like snuck up. I feel like Proud Warrior was like in and out every so often. They were not great at the beginning, but I feel like with gear and time it got a little better. But I mean, when you're on your Guardian Druid, like it feels good to heal. Like it's just they're just bricks, and it's like they don't have all these like the jump away like bell and whistle type stuff, but like it's a tank, and if they live, they're doing their job. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, I'm kind of wondering if it's just like a niche for the tournament with like the current gear levels, right? So I'm kind of wondering, like at the max end of the 233, 226 gear cycle, if Guardian Druid is just like the best for 27 and 28 keys, but once like we start getting that 240, 250 eye level, I kind of wonder if the other tanks are just going to be tankier in general, in which case you won't really need like the bear sturdiness,
Yeah, it does feel like the way that the stats and like how everything weights on all the tanks right now, the bears just like, if you're doing those super high keys, and something would otherwise one shot like the paladin or like the death knight or something, it feels like the bear would just take a little pat on the slap on the wrist or whatever and brush it off. But yeah, I think people have to be good at it too. There's a lot of mastery to it. Like it doesn't seem crazy complex, but you watch people like really excel at it sometimes. That's cool to watch.
Well, the thing about the high keys and the bear specifically is all of the top routes right now are built around 3-minute cooldowns, right? Because you got to think outside of just the Guardian Druid, because the Guardian Druid obviously has the Incarn, right? Because when you have Incarn, you're essentially invincible, right? You can literally pull the entire world and you'll be absolutely fine with Incarn. But you're kind of timing that 3-minute cooldown. So you've got the Mage who's always going to have his combust or her combust at the 1-minute cooldown, right? So at 3 minutes, every 3 minutes, Mage has cooldowns. Every 3 minutes, your Balanced Druid has cooldowns. And to be honest, I'm not really sure exactly what the cooldowns are of the Elemental Shaman, but do they fit into the 2 or 3 minute cooldown cycle?
There's a 1 and a 3, I believe, because you're looking at like Stormkeeper,
okay,
which is shorter, and then you've got your 2 elementals that you can kind of do like on and off. So like you can have the Earth Elemental for to help the tank when he's got a he's waiting on his cooldown, and then you have your Fire Elemental for the the DPS cooldown. So you're kind of versatile in that sense.
Yeah, that's essentially what's happening right now, especially for this tournament. Is I don't think people realize that like all of the routes are essentially built around the 3-minute cooldown timer, right? So all of the big pulls happen at 3 minutes, and there's always typically like a filler pull in between. So you've got a giant pull, and then you've got like a small pull that goes into a pride. So the small pull plus the pride equals 3 minutes, right? And then you're back at another giant pull, and you just kind of keep that giant pull, small pull, giant pull, small pull cycle going back and forth. And just especially with pride, it works out to be pretty efficient, right? So if you do like 15% pull all at once, and then you do a 5% pull, do the pride, do a 15% pull, and then a 5% pull, and then a pride, that's just like the perfect way of progressing through a dungeon right now. And it'll be interesting to see if the new seasonal fix changes that. And but right now that's definitely why I think the meta is going to change, at least for the end of 9.0.5. I think we'll see a lot of Guardian Druid, and it'd be kind of interesting to see what happens after the tournament.
Yeah. One thing too to consider with Elemental Shaman, I know they're back in the meta more so because of their high damage throughput. And like Earthquake is so potent with the knockdown and like the AoE and stuff like that. But it also allows them to shine, like when they weren't getting the invites. Now they're getting the invites, but there's things they've had the whole time. Like the benefit of Earthbind is huge. Like on what's the affix where the ads spawn, right? And they target
Spiteful.
People.
Yeah,
Spiteful.
Yeah.
Earthbind is so strong on that. And if something gets out of the Earthbind range, you've got instant cast, no cooldown frost shocks. You can slow anything at any time. You've got your cap totem.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got, dude, the potential for off healing on Elemental Shaman is like pretty unmatched.
Oh, Ancestral Guidance, yeah, for sure.
Ancestral Guidance is a healing cooldown. That's like a tranquility.
Yep.
If you Stormkeepers and get those chain lightnings off and drop an Earthquake and you have Guidance up, like you're full healing it, like it's a cooldown. Yep. And that's huge. And if you're willing to spend the GCD and your group needs it, you can have Healing Stream Totem down at all times. So it's like, you could finish a high key and you're gonna have like your tank and your healer at the top of the meter, but then like doing half of their healing, if not a little bit more, if you're good enough, is the Elemental Shaman. And you're like, where is that coming from? Because they're still putting out the damage, but it's really cool to see that you can utilize all that support that's kind of been there the whole time, but is more now more viable because they actually do the damage.
Yeah, for sure.
I think they kind of went under the radar for a little bit, mainly because of that legendary. They couldn't get it right off the bat when the expansion came out.
Oh, from the world boss? Yeah.
They have to wait for the world boss to come up on rotation. And so I think that kind of let them slide underneath the radar and not be the flavor of the month right out the bat. No, right out the gate there. And I think people are finally catching on to that now.
It'll be interesting, too, to see how the meta shifts up. And I think they just announced this either today or yesterday, but they announced the loot tables for Sylvanas, which will be the last boss of the Shards of Domination. And it's kind of unusual what they're doing. So it's going to have that typical, the last two bosses of the raid are going to drop higher item level gear than the rest of the raid. But for weapons, which is super important for basically every class, not every single class is going to get a higher item level weapon. And so classes like Windwalker Monks, for example, there are going to be no one-hander weapons that are dropping from the boss. And there's no two-hand agility staff. And so something like a Guardian Druid, they're not going to have like that extra item level coming from their weapon. And I think that's actually going to hurt a lot of classes. I think there's a bow, there's a two-handed sword, and I think there's like agility daggers, and that might be it. No, there's a two-handed intellect staff as well. So I guess most of your casters are covered, but some of the classes that are super popular are not going to get any kind of stat benefit or like actual weapon damage increase from that additional item level. So
now, is it the bow that is going to change up kill shot for the hunters?
So I think they actually changed that. I think they're just making it a complete separate ability now. So yeah, initially it was going to actually change kill shot, and now I think it's literally just giving you a new ability. It's like an artifact. Artifact
it's
power.
Its own thing.
Yeah, I think they're literally using the artifact system from what was that, Legion. I think they're literally just adding on to that and giving you a new ability, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. So is it still going to be a kill shot though? I guess that's where my curiosity is.
I'd have to pull it up, but it seems like
I don't recall if it works with like an execute range or not. It seemed like that might be the sentiment early on, but they might have tweaked it into something else. I know they did separate it from like you still have kill shot and now you also have this. And I think they are slightly different. But I don't know the differences.
Because it's kind of making me think a little bit, because for most of this tier in plus, especially in the MDI, it was the buff the mage, tier.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like maybe we could have something that's more buff the hunter in the next tier, but I don't know, since they're doing a lot of changes, it's got me curious. I really don't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah, my thought about that is for like an M plus group, you typically want to have your synergies, right? So that's why Vengeance Demon Hunter, I mean, it was great just for kiting, but on top of that, you also got the magic buff, to help out the Boomkin, which was your single target profile, and then your mage, which was your AoE dungeon clearer, right? And so kind of the three of those synergize together, and I agree with you. I think if the hunter, gets all this extra stuff from Sylvanas, especially since rogues are getting some pretty high level agility daggers, and I think they're going to be one of the best melee classes, you could see some sort of like warrior meta with a hunter, and then
Monk.
yeah, I think a monk would synergize well there, but I don't know if they're going to have the damage throughput. They don't scale very well, so maybe you'll see like a rogue in there as well.
The Windwalker curse.
Yeah, they don't scale very well. They're not getting one-handers off the new boss. I don't know. There might be some good trinkets or something for them. And I mean, obviously, they're crushing M+ right now, so even not scaling up that well, they're probably still going to perform fairly well.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, I think you wanted to talk about the Sylvanas fight a little bit, didn't you? Spooge?
Well, I was watching some videos on it, and they're talking about it. And from what I understand, there's not going to be a mythic only phase in this encounter.
Yeah, that's been confirmed.
So that's going to be something new. So I guess maybe not as long of a race to world first on this one, but there's going to be several phases to the fight. And I started laughing when I saw the first transition, which you're fighting at the very top of Torghast. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Lich King ICC.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And technically we're supposed to be like inverted from ICC, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the sky is going to change, which signifies that we're not, above ICC anymore. And the first thing that was going to happen was she was going to kind of fly up, and the jailer's like doing his own thing while this is going on. He's like ascending to go raise hell somewhere, and she's kind of being the doorstop there, kind of keeping us from going after him. And what basically what's going to happen is Jaina and Thrall are going to be making pathways through the sky, and we're going to have to be jumping on these little pathways as they create them and as we're fighting Sylvanas. And the first thing I thought of, dude, was Destiny and the jumping puzzles. Do you remember that?
No one's gonna clear the raid then if we have that.
I was thinking about that. I mean, Destiny would put it in, during boss fights and thing. And I remember the Taken King, for example. You had to jump all the way to the very top of this boss room, grab an orb, and then bring it down to your raid team. And it had to like rotate. And I remember whenever we got to one friend, we're sitting there DPSing, trying to stay alive, and he would jump up, fall down, and go reset, jump up, fall down. And we're like, oh, come on. And so when I saw that is the very first thing, and I'm like, oh God, not platforms.
I'll tell you
something with the jump.
I'll tell you, they've been testing the Eye of the Jailer fight. Yeah, there's something there's an ability that has a tooltip exactly like that. Like you're gonna have to jump to a different platform, and realistically, all it is you walk over to this set of it's like a set of spears, like hook spears, and an extra action bar appears, and you literally just click a button and it throws you to the other side. So I bet you that's what it's going to end up being. It's just some sort of extra action bar button that you click
or
on.
like in ICC when you throw the jetpack on or something and you jump to the other boat.
Yeah, exactly.
Y'all remember Nax? For the life of me, I cannot remember that boss, but it was a positive and negative boss.
Thaddeus.
Yes. Yeah, Thaddeus. And, half your rig went to the left platform and half the rig went to the right platform.
I'm missing the jump to the...
That was just a jump down. Like, there was nothing fancy about it. It was just jump over, and it was slightly lower, so it kind of helped you out. And people still failed at that. So
just fall in the slime and work their way back. It was funny, too, because, like, if I recall, it didn't, like, instantly kill you. It just took them, like, a really long time to get back up the ramp and come over.
Yeah,
I believe there also was in vanilla, there was the jump in Wailing Caverns to get from like one section to the other. And that was like actually very precise, like pretty much like old school Mario leveled, like 1 pixel like size variable to get onto it. And I think when they released Classic, they actually shortened it. Because I'm pretty sure in Classic it's not the same jump as what it was like at vanilla launch. It doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, half the time you didn't even like know it was there right until you walked through the gap.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you fall down, you gotta do the walk of shame back around. And so if that is fight, and I'm like, this is not gonna be good if it's something, like that where we have to do jumping from platform to platform. But it did sound like that. But I don't know if any of that was confirmed yet.
That fight, sure. I looked into that fight, and I skimmed the whole scope of like, because I do genuinely like the lore from expansion to expansion, and like I don't necessarily read the books and stuff, but I read like the cliff notes and stuff that people post on YouTube and things like that. But it seems like I'm curious. I have an idea of what's going on with the jailer, but I'm curious where Sylvanas will, if she'll actually die, or if she'll become some, go into a weapon, or who knows what'll happen to her. But it seems like, and I don't know like how you guys do spoilers or anything on the podcast or whatever, but
we're gonna spoil this for you.
Sure, right. You do it seems like Zaval, or the jailer, is channeling like a portal right at the top of Torghast to get to Oribos, and he's trying to get to the Arbiter's sanctum there. Mm-hmm. So it's like the Arbiter's at the very top of Oribos, and it's like they're kind of like yin and yang essentially, and there's the art where like he's missing that thing in his chest, and she's got that orb. So it seems to me like he's gathering the keys or whatever, using Anduin or whatever to get those, and then opening this portal. Sylvanas is fending you off while you try and deter him. He makes it there. The final phase is in that room where the Arbiter is. Well, there's probably some animation of the jailer just like wailing on the Arbiter, or like chaining her up or something like that. And it seems like, because there's probably going to be another tier after, he gets what he's looking for. So you get this crazy like moment where like you might beat Sylvanas, but then the jailer's looming over you, having just killed like the prime holy force of the Oribos and the Shadowlands like law and things like that. So it's cool. I always like the idea of like there being some negative effect at the end of a raid, even though you're like doing what you're supposed to do. Like when at the end of Antorus, for example, when you beat Argus and Sargeras still just winds up and plunges that blade in, like I like stuff like that,
Yeah.
Well, so I will say, from the developer interviews that they've had, the developers are like way more excited for 9.2 than they are about 9.1. They said there's something absolutely epic coming, and on top of that, there's an encrypted model for the jailer on the PTR right now that they haven't released. So obviously, I'm thinking that gap in his chest is probably going to be filled in right in this new model.
Yeah,
but yeah,
what is the gap supposed to be right now?
It's whatever. I don't know. It's whatever the Arbiter has, right?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, she's got something that's essentially keeping him from being like complete or something, something of that nature.
Mm-hmm. So. It's interesting because I remember I saw concept art of this like almost like Amin Thul looking concept art where it was like this big, almost like elderly, like gray to bluish skinned person, but they were in like kind of tattered like gold and white like robes and armaments, and had like long hair and a beard. So it almost gave you like Titan vibes. And I was like, and this was before they had released the jailer like bald, like handsome Squidward model. And I was like, oh, that's got to be the jailer, because they had only done the silhouette. And then when they finally released the jailer, I was like, oh, well then what is this? Like it must just be some leak to like, just some Titan concept art. But what I'm thinking is that that's either like the model he turns into, or it's the
rune carver.
It's the model for the rune carver, right?
Yeah,
I think he turns back into the Primus.
I think they already announced that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the rune carver.
But it's interesting that if that model, I think if you put that model side by side with the jailer, there's like some similarities where they might be from the same like origin.
Okay.
Where like I don't know if they're the same race or if they're related or something like that, but yeah, I don't know. It's cool stuff. I like that type of stuff, and I'm for the most part into what they're doing. I thought that saving Denathrius was kind of a cop out, but I get like they like the voice actor. He did a good job. The character's cool, so
yeah,
whatever.
I wonder if at the end of the expansion they'll go ahead and chain the rune carver back up and put the Lich King crown on him. Maybe he'll be our new Lich King.
Yeah, could be.
Dude's used to being chained up and bound to servitude, so maybe they'll have him do it.
I know that the Bolvar, the current Lich King, is supposed to be helping us out as we go forward with our fight against the jailer, because he's supposed to be the biggest bad of this expansion, which usually we have who we think's going to be this biggest bad, and then we get somebody else at the very end.
Yeah, an old god or whatever.
An old god comes out again.
Yeah.
But I think they're trying to build up to bigger and bigger storylines now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that they want to bring in more of, like the prime level beings there, like the Void Lords and things like that, which they're the ones that put in the old gods, which we thought were like the biggest bads at one point. But there's actually, another tier above them of these guys pulling the strings. So
that's like one thing lore-wise that I think is the most interesting about Shadowlands is like the Winter Queen, Denathrius, the chicken, what is it, the Archon and Bastion, is that her name? I can't remember. All of these people, they're like part of a pantheon, the Pantheon of Death. And then you've got like the Order Pantheon that Azeroth's used to, which is like the Titans. It's like Ionar and Aman'Thul and those guys. It's you wouldn't imagine, like, it just feels weird to like thinking about like fighting those. Like imagine fighting like Aman'Thul or Norgannon or whatever. It's just like a Sargeras, right? They like, we effectively beat Sargeras, but like they're not gonna have us like toe up to him, right? Like he's just this huge thing. But it's like we're doing that, but adjacent. It's just like a different pantheon, but of as far as I'm aware, like presumably the same power level. So I don't know. It seems like they're gonna work their way around like the cosmology to these different pantheons or whatever.
Yeah, it seems like there's a rotation, and I know a lot of speculation was next one would be light versus dark. And the light is those little guys you see in the Draenei area. What are those?
Yeah, the Naru.
Yeah, the Naru. You got the Naru, and then you have the Void Lords on the other side. And so that was kind of one thing they're talking about, because they were talking with the lore with Denathrius that he had spies everywhere. And one of the places that they said he had spies was the Army of Light. And he was talking about a Dreadlord. And there was only one light Dreadlord that I cannot remember the name
one
of.
On the Vindicar. Yeah, I can't remember his name either. I remember thinking that was so sus when I saw that. I was like, there's no way this has good implication.
They're saying that he was a spy for Denathrius.
Well, and that's his in, right? That's his into the light, because Denathrius created those, the Nethrazim or whatever, that whole race, and they're bringing them in a lot. Like, did you see all the new Nethrazim models that are coming from? Yeah. I think Korthia is the new zone. There's going to be a ton of them in there. So yeah, it's like Denathrius is related to them, and then they've got the one that's part of the light, and then they had the whole light quest line that was like, showed this weird side when they tried to do what they did to Illidan. And you had the weird light quest for when you unlock Magar orcs, where what's her name? The paladin, the Draenei paladin, who came and did that like genocide siege type thing. It's like, holy cow.
She's like lost her mind, and
they put this. It's cool to see them put a weird twist on like holy, right? Because it's such a trope that's goodness, right? But it's just this blind, like, this is the way type mentality, it seems. And it's cool that I really hope they lean into that being some force of, just.
Like that's who we fight next time.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they're definitely lining up 9.2, which has been confirmed. They definitely say it's going to be like super epic. And so I'm looking forward to that a lot. And, if you watch like that Taliesin video, he went into pretty good detail about like, the Sylvanas fight and like what could potentially be. And it would be interesting if, the jailer somehow escaped the Shadowlands, right? And he somehow had an impact on the land outside of the Shadowlands, right? And somehow got the rest of the game involved. So yeah, they definitely could go anywhere from here.
Well, I'm excited to see where it goes, because I get really into that whole bigger lore picture. To me that's interesting, and I always like seeing that. I know that's not really your thing. I know you like more of the let's get in and play.
I appreciate it. For me, I mean, my mind is always on the kind of like the competitive side of the game, and really they could do anything as long as the game is still competitive. I'm gonna have fun, right? But I definitely enjoy seeing the lore and all that kind of stuff.
Just wait. Did you guys ever play Star Fox 64?
Oh, yeah.
64.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The Andros battle at the end where it's his head and his hands.
Yeah.
And you like defeat it and there's the brain and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
20 years from now, expansion number 50, we're gonna we're gonna go into some planetary thing on our WoW spaceship, and we're gonna roll up to a big Chris Metzen head with these big like planet-sized hands, and we're just gonna duke it out with like the final boss level 1000 Chris Metzen.
What tier do we unlock flying though? Yeah, we're just gonna be walking through space until.
Yeah, right.
I tell you, the one thing in lore that I've always kind of looked forward to is Azeroth itself, because that's how the Titans are born, right? They're in these planets, and Azeroth is supposed to be special, which is why she gets a lot of attention. You know, the Void Lords are sending all these old gods. You know, the Titans are keeping an eye because Azeroth is a Titan that is yet to be born.
Yeah, she's the most sought after world soul, it seems.
Yeah, and there's something special about her, and you know, at one point she will, you know, I don't know if hatch is the right word. I don't know how Titans come out, but she will, you know, come out, and you know, we don't know what she's going to be like. You know, is she going to be, you know, the good Azeroth we would hope she is, or has she been corrupted by the old gods like the Void Lords wanted? You know, and that could potentially be something, you know, if they did do the Void Lords next expansion. I don't know, but
yeah, it's like, is it a product of its environment? And it's like, if that's the case, Azeroth has like fought for a lot, but it's also been the home of like a lot of war and like generally shady and weird stuff. So it's like, I don't know. It is curious. I've always thought about that and think that when they finally like expound on what that character is, that'll be really cool.
everything that's ever happened in WoW minus Draenor has happened on Azeroth.
Yeah.
Including that y'all remember way back in like, I was like in high school, maybe like vanilla, the funeral massacre.
Oof. I remember that.
That happened on Azeroth. That's got to affect her.
True.
So I think the probably the last topic for us today, and maybe we don't really have much to talk about here, but they did release the new mega dungeon on the PTR. Just kind of wondering if you guys had any feedback on that, or have you even seen it yet?
I haven't combed through. It's Tazavesh, right?
Yeah.
The market.
Yep.
I haven't combed through any of the information. I remember looking at like some of the boss models and like some of the concept for it. I haven't seen the most recent thing you're referencing. I think just as a concept, like I do like these style dungeons. I like a new dungeon being added to the list, and I don't necessarily like the phase where they're just mythic and they don't have keys for them yet. I wish that they would just like be split and like have the mythic version, have it be relevant for a little while, and then like by the time like mythic raid is available or like final raid finder wing is available or something like that, you put out the split 2 key version, because that's really like there's a window where you do it for a little bit and then you just bench it, and it's like I wish it was relevant time. I hope they find a way to keep it in, but conceptually it seems cool. On paper I like the idea of it more than like the Karazhan revamp and Mechagon. Even though I liked both the Karazhan revamp and Mechagon, I think like just conceptually it seems cooler to me. It seems like it could have that Court of Stars kind of feel in certain parts, which like would be really neat. I feel like it's like it's like a type of dungeon on a like just on a concept level that isn't in the game right now. That would feel really fresh.
It's got a piece in it that's kind of like Court of Stars, where you're like trying to walk around and find the imposter or like the informant, right? It does have a little piece of that in there. It's not quite as complicated, and it's fairly straightforward, but you have to buy, there's a vendor that you buy something off of, and then you essentially have to walk through the streets and like trade your way up to this final piece, right? So there's a vendor that wants like what you bought from the vendor, you go give it to them, they give you a new item, then you got to track down the new person that wants it. And so there's like a little bit of a Court of Stars, kind of mechanic that you do, and halfway through the dungeon, you're actually teleported to a different area outside of the market where you do 2 encounters, and then it teleports you back inside, which is kind of a throwback. I forget which dungeon that is. Is that Halls of Valor, where you kind of went through the portal, right? And then you're like in like a completely different area, right? So there's something kind of like that in it, and it looks pretty interesting. Bosses don't look terribly hard, which is a little disappointing, but they definitely look, I mean, they're new, so it's going to be fun regardless, right?
Yeah, some fresh is good.
My only thing I'm worried about is kind of what Spum mentioned is for Karazhan and for Mechagon, it sat there for a tier as the mega dungeon, you know. And there was things to farm. I know you had the Azerite powers and things in Mechagon, but outside of that, it just became very stale content very quickly.
Yeah, imagine if this tier we just did in the length that it was. Imagine if there was a dungeon that was stuck in Mythic that wasn't a key. Like none of us like what would that be, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, we wouldn't do it because we'd be you know doing raid and we'd be doing Mythic keys.
They have to know that idea is there, and that you have to hope that they put something in to prevent that from happening.
Well, there's a very clear, I think it's an 8 boss encounter, so there's very clear, you know, there's 4 bosses, and then you essentially teleport out of the dungeon into this new area, and there's like a very clear wall where it's separated, right? So it's obvious
just
it's
like
be split.
Mechagon, where it's like upper, lower. Yeah.
It's super obvious it's going to be split into 2. But it seems like someone in the raid yesterday said that the base item level that's going to drop out of there is 210, which, and they were excited about it, but I got thinking about it. I'm like, man, like the normal raid and like the heroic raid is going to be dropping like, I think the heroic raid almost drops like 240 gear. It's like high 230 gear.
It's 210?
Like, yeah, it's like 210. That's not even worth doing. Like even on alts, once you get your renown up, that's probably what the world quests are going to drop, right? So it's
or like Sanctum LFR, or it's better going to
actually, that's probably equivalent, right? That's probably Sanctum LFR gear. So I don't know. I'm not super thrilled with that. I mean, if the Valor system kicks in right away, you know, and getting some of that 210 gear, some of the new trinkets maybe, and then being able to immediately upgrade them, assuming you know, do your round of 15s or whatever, that could be worthwhile still, but it's kind of disappointing just having that low level gear.
Yeah, it'll get stale too quick like that, so hopefully they take that into account.
But yeah, on top of that, I guess the last topic is they did announce what the Shards of Domination are essentially going to do. And so what that is, it's raid gear that has like a special socket type, and you get gems that drop specifically from the raid. So there's unholy gems, there's frost gems, and there's blood gems. And so some of them have some pretty powerful effects on them. For example, I'm thinking of one that it works a lot like the Night Fae ability, where you hit something before it hits you and you get some like additional crit chance, right? I think there's one of these shards that synergizes with that. So your damage is increased by 5% for 10 seconds after attacking an enemy you have not damaged yet. And so you pair that up with the Night Fae ability, right? And apparently those gems are going to work outside of the raid as well. And
that's going to be crazy.
Yeah, so I'm kind of wondering if this is going to be the tier of borrowed power again. I'm wondering if you have to be in the raid, you know, or else you're just not going to be competitive at all.
That was the part of BFA that I did not like at the end was
with
that
the corruption.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ugh. Yeah, not a fan.
But
I think these powers feel like, and I think they announced it in 9.3. They'll be bringing tier gear back, right? Tier sets and things like that.
9.2 actually. Maybe it's 9.3, but yeah, I think 9.2.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I think. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Too, yeah.
Yep.
And this almost this feels almost to me like this is like a way of doing that, like doing the power levels of tier without like having it attached to like tier gear. It's like, okay, we're gonna bring it in shortly, but we didn't put it in this. But here's the like tier light, you know?
Yeah, they're kind of being a little sneaky about it. So there's 3 different types of gems, right? There's unholy, there's frost, and there's blood. And if you're using 3 of any of the gems, you get a raid specific buff that only works in the raid, right? So if you're wearing 3 blood gems, then you get like the blood set bonus that only works inside the raid, but the gems themselves apparently work outside of the raid. So it's going to be interesting. No one has tested any of that right on the PTR because it's not live. And so I've got a feeling that's going to be something that's like not really tested. And we're just going to see something nutty that, you know, something wild that just no one was anticipating. Like, just like what I was saying there, you know, the first strike ability, and then you pair that up with that gem. That just sounds crazy, getting 25% crit chance or whatever it is, and then having your damage amplified by, you know, 5%. And I'm sure that probably stacks too, right? Maybe they're unique, but maybe they're not, right? So maybe if you throw 3 of those in, you get 15% extra damage for 10 seconds, plus you had 25% extra crit. Like, it seems like that's just like that's gonna have to be the cookie cutter build for M+.
God, I was not even thinking about stacking them.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
In my brain, I was like, oh, they're unique, and so I was thinking about combinations. And I'm wondering if this is going to really throw PvP a curveball, because maybe BGs or something, because they're not going to care about the actual raid buff themselves. They'll just be taking best in slot, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, freaking rogues aren't even gonna have to use Master Assassin anymore. They're just gonna get an extra 25% crit chance, popping you out of stealth. And
yeah, because you're not hitting them first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff coming up in the raid tier. I mean, I think for us at this point, we're gonna try to go for CE yet. Still a lot of stuff for us personally in 0.5, but I think we're ready for that 9.1, man.
Yeah, definitely ready. But I'm still having fun. I'm kind of fresh to your guys' group still. I definitely don't have the like burnout mentality that some people might be getting into. I'm feeling fresh. I'm feeling good. SLG or Stone Legion General seems like it'll be fun.
I agree.
In all the ways. I'm very excited to proc that with you guys.
Yeah, I am too.
I just like healing with you guys. I'm serious.
We appreciate you guys, or you carrying us in the raid and on the podcast. So yeah, it's been fun, man. But I think that's probably gonna do it. Unless you have something else to talk about there, Spooge.
Just be sure to check out the YouTube channel. From there, you can find the Discord link, and you can come talk to us. We always like having conversations with people that listen to us ramble on. So definitely check that out. You can look us up, Depleted Key Podcast.
You have anything else to add, Spum? You want to shout yourself out anyway?
No, I'm good. Just a thank you to you guys. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh man, it was a blast
with you guys, and thanks for listening.
Oh man, it was a blast having you on here. So, but that's gonna wrap it up for us. So, thank you, everyone.
See you next week.
Yep.
Later.